I was shocked when my high school freshman daughter, Ariana, returned home covered in blood. She was supposed to visit my in-laws' house, but something went wrong. Panicking, I quickly treated her forehead injury and screamed for my husband. He answered the phone. I shouted out King, demanding who he was. To my surprise, he calmly explained that he was on a business trip. Stunned by his unexpected response, I realized my husband and daughter had left for my in-laws' home 5 days ago. Confused and worried, I confronted Ariana about her injury. In the midst of my confusion, she revealed a shocking fact. Her name was Stuart Carl, and I was a 40-year-old part-time housewife. My husband was in who traveled to schools sell high school material. He emphasized the importance of to always behave properly. Our daughter, Ariana, had become a reliable high school freshman, taking on responsibilities like making dinner and waiting me when I returned to work. 5 years ago, my life took a turn when my mother fell seriously ill, requiring constant care. Balancing caregiving and part-time work left me unable to visit my in-laws' house. Despite feeling sorry for missing family gatherings, Chris, my understanding husband, continued to visit my in-laws' house alone, even after my mother-in-law's sudden death 3 years ago. Devastated by the loss, my father-in-law became depressed, and Chris' visits to his house increased. The expenses also rose to $200 or $400 visit. Now, with my mother-in-law gone, I wanted to cheer up my father-in-law by taking him on a trip and treating him to delicious sushi. However, my plans were disrupted when my daughter returned home with a serious injury, leading to the revelation of Stuart Carl's hidden identity and the unraveling of our seemingly peaceful life. However, as someone who was solely focused on taking care of my mother and not returning to my in-laws' house, I found it difficult to question the money my husband, Chris, needed for his visits. One day, he informed me that he required $700 for the next visit, without providing details on how the money would be used. Despite my concerns about the large amount, I convinced myself that it was necessary for my father-in-law's happiness. Facing a sudden expense, I had no spare money and had to temporarily withdraw funds from the account where I saved my daughter's tuition fees. Determined to repay it, I decided to cut back on personal expenses, avoiding the hair salon and refraining from using Ariana's money. Through hard work and sacrifice, I gradually returned the borrowed money to my daughter's account. During a break while Ariana was preparing for her entrance exam, I eagerly planned to spend quality time with her. Excited about the idea of treating Ariana and my father-in-law to a crab feast, I considered it a reward for their hard work. Ariana gratefully accepted, never complaining about the challenges she faced while helping me care for my mother. On the day of departure to my father-in-law's house, Ariana waved cheerfully, promising to buy souvenirs. The family shared smiles, unaware that something unexpected would occur. 5 days later, as I prepared lunch in the kitchen, I heard the front door open with a bang. Without ringing the doorbell, Ariana stood there with blood flowing from her forehead. Panicking, I screamed and rushed to bring her inside, asking frantically about my husband's whereabouts. To my surprise, when I called Chris, he claimed to be at work on a business trip since the day after taking Ariana to her grandfather's house. Confused and in disbelief, I couldn't simply accept his explanation. While tending to my daughter's wounds, I asked her about the incident. With a pale face and trembling lips, Ariana whispered that her dad had pushed her. I was shocked by this revelation. Listening to Ariana's story, I gently rubbed her back and learned an unbelievable fact. My husband, Chris, had been keeping a secret from us, and he had hurt Ariana because she discovered it. Shockingly, he had threatened her, bleeding and wounded, warning that she wouldn't escape with just an injury if she revealed the secret. At that moment, my father-in-law returned, and Ariana seized the opportunity to flee from their house. Fortunately, Ariana had some money and managed to take the train home alone. I couldn't forgive anyone who hurt my beloved daughter. My anger wasn't just directed at Chris for hitting her, but also for the secret he had been hiding. Determined to seek justice, I vowed revenge. Upon learning all of Chris' misdeeds, I picked up my smartphone to call my father-in-law. However, to my surprise, I discovered a mountain of missed calls from him. Apologizing for not noticing the phone earlier, I explained Ariana's urgent situation. My father-in-law, worried about her safety, had been calling repeatedly. I was left speechless when he shared his side of the story. Chris had been covering the fact that our injured daughter had run away to our house, weaving a lie. Filled with anger, I decided to reveal everything to my father-in-law and vowed to take Ariana to the hospital. Despite my fury towards Chris, I forgive him. Seeking justice, I asked my father-in-law to keep him at his house for a while. He agreed to help, promising to convince Chris to stay with him. In the following days, I prepared to confront my husband. After the investigation into Chris' secret was completed, I headed to my father-in-law's house. When I reached the doorstep and tried to ring the doorbell, I saw Ariana run at me, gasping for breath. "Mom, wait a minute. I told you to wait at home. That's impossible. I need to solve this and address the injury." I didn't want to show my parents fighting in front of Ariana. So I had initially planned to go to my father-in-law's house alone. But Ariana was not going to remain quiet. She insisted she had the right to speak up, and despite my reluctance, I accepted my daughter's anger and decided to confront my husband alongside her. When I entered the living room, my father-in-law, who was already aware of my plan, greeted me. There, I saw my husband, still in his pajamas, lying on the sofa and watching TV despite it being noon. Curious about his supposed business trip, I asked, "Oh, wasn't it a business trip?" Chris jumped up in surprise and stammered, No, I was supposed to go, but it got canceled," trying to make excuses. "Well, that doesn't matter. I wanted to know about Ariana's injury," I insisted. Chris began to provide a slippery explanation, claiming it was a simple fall down the stairs. I wanted to shout at him for being so evasive, but my father-in-law intervened, expressing that they already knew the injury was Chris's fault. Ariana also raised her voice in agreement, and I glared at my husband. Flustered, Chris suddenly had an idea and looked proud as he spoke. "You haven't visited my father's house for a long time, but you act like you're so great. I cherish my father more than you guys do." He laughed and smirked, thinking he had the upper hand. I hadn't said anything initially because I thought he might have a point. However, from Ariana's story, I knew my husband's words were full of lies. Really? Can you say that you cherish your father when you go back to your father's house, but let your daughter do all the housework instead of spending time with him? Ariana interjected, "Yes, you've been lazing around at home since we came here." "Shut up. It's just this time. I'm always working hard." Unfazed, I took out my father-in-law's account book, which I had obtained in advance. It contained detailed records of Chris's behavior at my father-in-law's house, including the inflow and outflow of money. Reading from the book, I revealed the truth about Chris's deception. On June 10th, I gave Chris $150 for transportation. He lounged around all day, went out at night as usual, and returned in the morning. Food expenses were high because Chris was there. I continued in a monotone voice, exposing Chris's lies about not receiving transportation funds and his habit of taking money from his father every visit. It became clear that Chris, taking advantage of my absence, had portrayed me as a stingy wife and sought sympathy from his father. "Aren't you ashamed of living off your parents at your age? You received so much help, didn't even get an allowance, and yet you came to my house often," I concluded, revealing the depth of my husband's deception. "I felt sorry for you and did many things for you, but it was all nonsense." We blamed him, and Chris choked on his words, falling silent. Wondering how he used the money he swindled from his father, I stated, "Well, that's you. You don't have to say anything. You're probably just thinking of another terrible lie." Ignoring Chris's mumbled attempts at an explanation, I presented a certain photo in front of him. You wanted the money so badly because you were living it up in a place like this, weren't you? I questioned. Chris turned pale as the photo revealed him entering a shady massage parlor, a secret Ariana had uncovered during her visit. In fact, Ariana thought Chris was taking good care of his father, but she discovered he kept going out at night and returning in the morning. Secretly investigating him, she installed an app on his phone that would track his location without his knowledge. When Chris went out, she checked his location on her computer and found that he was always at the same place. When she searched on the internet, she discovered it was a nighttime service for men. About to call me and inform me of what she found, Chris came home and saw Ariana searching for the location and details on the computer. Angry, he pushed her, and she hit her head on the corner of the dresser, resulting in her injury. After hearing Ariana's story, I left my mother in the care of a professional caregiver for a few days and staked out the place to gather evidence of Chris's spending. I took photos of him entering and leaving the establishment. When I saw my husband walk into the place with a light step, I was shocked. You used the money we saved for Ariana's tuition fees for this. Daddy is the worst, Ariana exclaimed. Faced with the irrefutable evidence of the photo, my husband muttered in a small voice, "It's normal for a man to do this kind of thing." He then looked up at my father-in-law, seeking his agreement with an upward glance. Indignant, my father-in-law responded, "What are you talking about? You can't afford to waste money on night outings when you have to pay for your child's education. I'm tired from work too. What's wrong with taking a break?" My daughter sighed, disgusted with her father's attitude, and asked me, "Mom, do you know what kind of place that is?" I responded honestly, no, I don't. I just took pictures and left. I thought. So, here you go. Ariana placed several sheets of paper with the place's homepage printed on them on the table. When my father-in-law and I peered inside, we saw that the girls working there were wearing school uniforms, even though everyone seemed to be an adult. It was a place where they provided services in cosplay. I couldn't believe I had inadvertently shown my daughter this kind of world at her age, and I was filled with regret. However, Ariana was unfazed and casually remarked, "So this is what Daddy likes. Gross." She shivered as if she had a chill and handed a piece of paper to her father. "You don't have to say it like that. If the schools affiliated with your business partner find out that you love uniforms, it would be a huge problem. I can't imagine the company that sells teaching materials to the schools would continue to employ someone with such a fetish," I coldly remarked, giving my husband a stern look. Realizing the gravity of the situation, my husband turned pale, and I immediately took out his schedule book, which had been left in his business bag. From it, I could see that all the schools he was attending were now known. I suggested, "Shall I contact these business partners about your lovely hobby?" Desperate, my husband apologized. "Please don't do that. I'm sorry. I went too far. I'll change my ways from now on." Trembling, he sat down on the spot, realizing he couldn't escape the consequences. Despite his desperate apologies, it was unforgivable that he had been going to that place for years, spending money recklessly, and causing his daughter to get hurt. Ariana declared, "Who would believe a liar like Daddy? I'm ready to consult a lawyer and prepare for divorce. You will pay me compensation for the money you spent extravagantly. This is the end of our relationship." Desperately pleading, my husband tried to cling to Ariana, but she avoided him and eventually burst into tears. We looked at him with cold eyes as he cried pathetically. The divorce was finalized soon after, and my husband was ordered to pay $10,000 for his reckless spending and $20,000 in compensation. Somehow, his frequent visits to that place were discovered by his company, and Chris was fired. He was also cut off by his father and now lives alone in a rundown house, surviving on day labor. Unable to afford the compensation, he ended up borrowing money from shady lenders and lives in fear of debt collectors. On the other hand, with more free time after the divorce, and with my daughter's help, my mother's condition improved dramatically. She no longer needed care, and now the three of us women live together happily and peacefully. Hope you guys enjoy this video. If you want more interesting stories, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next video. Take care.